Soldiers speak out. We can tell the truth of what we've seen. We are not liars. Soldiers speak out. We have a duty to all children and to their futures. Soldiers speak out.
Welcome to the Veterans Hour, a monthly program produced by the Rachel Corrie Chapter 109, Veterans for Peace in Olympia, Washington. I'm Mark Fleming, your host for this month's program. Veterans for Peace is a global organization of military veterans and allies whose collective efforts build a culture of peace. As Veterans for Peace, we bring a unique and important voice to issues of war and peace. We inform the public of the true causes and enormous costs of war and emphasize our nation's obligation to heal the wounds of war. The Rachel Corrie Chapter in Olympia is one of over 140 Veterans for Peace chapters worldwide whose work includes educating the public, advocating for dismantling of the war economy, providing services that assist veterans and victims of war, and most significantly, working to end all wars. Each month, we present a program focusing on veterans issues, and matters of war and peace. This program focuses on veterans pursuing higher education goals after leaving the military. The post-9/11 GI Bill offers a wide variety of educational veterans who want to continue their education following military services. Here to talk about those benefits, the opportunities, and challenges is Randy Kelly, Director of the Veterans Resource Center at the Evergreen State College. Welcome, Randy. Thanks for coming in, being on the show this evening.
It's good to be here.
Yes. And we've talked a bit about the Veterans Resource Center at the Evergreen State College. So tell me a little bit about how you got into this.
Well,
what your background is.
I got here in 2013. Before that, I spent 25 years in the Navy, where I was both enlisted and officer. And when I got out of the Navy, I actually went into K-12 education. And I worked in K-12 education for a number of years and was also teaching college at the same time. And started working with veterans in my classroom and started understanding that they were having a difficult time figuring out their benefits and so forth. So I made arrangements to have an internship with the VA, so I wanted to learn, first of all, mainly how their medical benefits work, because a lot of my veterans were having a difficult time getting medical services and so forth. But then the post-9/11 GI Bill was starting to come out, and I said, well, we need to look at this too. And so I spent almost a year with the VA studying how that works, and started working with veterans, and then the opportunity started opening up where they needed these veteran specialists at the various colleges, and so I started at a community college in a small town in Southern Virginia called Danville, Virginia. And I worked there for, I guess, 3 or 4 years, and then I ran into somebody at a conference in the University of Wisconsin in Madison who mentioned that they were getting ready to open up a brand new Veterans Resource Center at Evergreen State College. And that was a new concept that was just coming out on the horizon about these Veterans Resource Centers, and I thought this would be a great opportunity. So I contacted them, and it's history. In 2013, I got hired to open up the first center here in Washington.
So you started the center here?
Yes, October of 2013. And so since that time, we started out, I think we had about 113 veterans when we opened up the center, and we're now a little bit over 500 veterans on campus. Only about 300 use benefits, but we have a total of about 500 on campus.
Oh, excellent. And how has the veteran population increased since you've been here? Has it been steady at that amount?
It increased quite significantly as the war efforts in Afghanistan and Iraq wound down and veterans were getting out, and especially when the military did its rift back in 2016, 2017. But since that time, it has plateaued and it's actually dropped down a bit. And one of the things that has happened since the rift is the military has realized that one of the mistakes they made is that, like all good rifts, they got rid of all their middle management, and all of a sudden they're panicking, and so they shut the valve off, and they're not encouraging veterans to go to school right now. They're encouraging them to stay in the service. And so, but quite surprisingly, our veterans numbers at Evergreen have stayed quite steady, which is surprising.
Even as the school enrollment itself has declined.
Yes, and you know, school enrollment has declined for the general population of America, but veteran enrollment across the nation has stayed pretty steady. Your 18 to 20-year-olds, there's been a definite decline in that, but veteran enrollment has stayed almost steady.
And then you have the office here. So tell me a little bit about what they do. You see referred to as a one-stop center?
Yeah, we call it a one-stop shop. I like to tell veterans that if you're interested in education, all you need to do is walk on our campus, ask where the Veterans Resource Center is, and that's the first place and only place you need to start at. We will take you from, even if you haven't applied for your benefit, we will help you apply for your benefit. We'll talk to you about what that benefit is and how much it will get you. We will take you through the admissions process. We'll take you through the academic advising process. From the time you walk on campus to the time you walk across the stage with your diploma, we'll take care of you. It's a one-stop shop.
And and what do veterans themselves need to do in interacting with the office?
Well, when they come, we ask them if they've got a copy of their DD-214, that we'd like to have a copy of that. That allows me, when I'm talking to the VA, that I've got their service information, so I can talk to the VA and Social Security number, dates of service, etc. If they have already applied for a benefit and have gotten a certificate of eligibility, we ask them to bring that with them. Absolutely none of that is necessary the first day. When they walk in, we can start everything without that paperwork. One of the things that happens to veterans when they come out of the service and they want to get started to college, they get into this panic mode of, oh, I've got to have this, I've got to have this, and it's got to be done now, because that's the way it was in the service, you know. But actually, the day you sit down in class, the first day you sit down in your seat in class, we can have everything done that day, and you're still in plenty of time. So you don't need to panic about the benefits and about getting things in on time.
So someone could actually enroll in the college before doing all this?
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. They could enroll into college, get accepted at the college, and even register for class, and then we can apply for benefits and do all that other stuff, and they'll still have more than enough time to get their benefit and to start college.
And you also mentioned, we talked about veterans, but as we were talking about before the show, you also mentioned dependents.
Oh, yeah.
So they're eligible as well. So.
Dependents are eligible for a variety of benefits. Two benefits right off the top of my head is Chapter 33 post 9/11. If a service member has signed that benefit over to one of their children or to their spouse, then the spouse or child can use that just like a veteran. It's the same post 9/11. Follows the exact same rules.
So in other words, the veteran is giving up his or her benefits for the spouse or the child.
That is correct. In some cases, veterans have dual benefits, like they'll be eligible for Chapter 31, vocational rehabilitation, because they're disabled and can get that, and then they will give their post 9/11 to their children. Back in the around 2010 to about 2014, you had a lot of veterans giving their benefits to their spouses and their children, because once a veteran gives his benefit to the spouse or child, they can either move it from child to child or from spouse to child, or they can bring it back to themselves, but they cannot give it back once they take it back to themselves. And once they're out, they can't move it at all. They must do all this while they're on active duty.
Oh, okay. So while they're on active duty.
Right. So you can't transfer a benefit while you're off active duty, only while you're on active duty. And the military sees this as actually as a retention tool. And one of the things they do is they say that you have to be between 6 and 16 years in order to transfer a benefit, because we want to know that you're going to be around for a while, and at 16 years, we've already got you. So you have to do it in that window. If you're outside that window, you can't transfer the benefit.
And what is the normal term of enlistment in the military?
Normally 4 years.
4 years. So if somebody just comes in for 4 years, they can get their own benefits, but they can't transfer.
They cannot transfer it. No, unfortunately, that's.
As you said, so that's why they would like to keep you a few extra years to benefit from the skills that they've trained you in.
That's right. And then there's another chapter that dependents can use too called Chapter 35, Dependents Educational Assistance. And that is for dependents of veterans who are 100% disabled. And this pays them a stipend each month, either the child or the spouse, of $1,224 a month. And that's not enough to go to school on, okay? But the state of Washington has said that if you are receiving Chapter 35 Dependents Educational Assistance and the veteran is a Washington State resident and you are a Washington State resident, then we are going to waive 100% of your tuition and fees. So that $1,224 becomes a stipend for living, and then your tuition and fees are waived.
So just you have to cover your living expenses and your books, that sort of thing.
Right. And so
I had not heard about that before I
Right.
spoke with you. And then also you'd mentioned the Resource Center is a place where like veteran students who might encounter problems can come and get help, both from you as well as other veterans.
Yeah, we have 15 veterans and dependents that work in the Veterans Resource Center. They're what are called peer counselors. They are paid by the VA to work there. They get training, and then they can answer most of the questions that veterans have about benefits and the other thing that's the advantage here is they are students themselves. So when a veteran walks in and he says, you know, I've been thinking about taking this math course, but I'm a little leery about it. And another veteran will say, well, let me tell you about that. I took that course, and it's not what you think it is. And so it gives them some confidence in, you know, that they can talk to other veterans about their experiences in these various classes, or, you know, stay away from that professor. You don't want to go there. Mm-hmm. And so it also helps them. They'll come in and say, well, you know, I don't know, I have a bad back and I need a chair in class, but I don't know what to do. They can tell them, you know, we have an Access Services Center. We can get you a chair, a special chair for your class. So we have people working in that center that can help too. Plus we have VA certified counselors right there on campus if you need counseling, mental health counselors, and we have educational counselors available too.
So if a veteran is suffering, say, from PTSD or traumatic brain injury, those counselors are available to assist them.
We have counselors right there on campus, and if the veteran is not comfortable with going to a counselor on campus, that counselor will refer them to a counselor in the civilian community, and the VA allows that to happen.
Okay. But your office provides, I guess, kind of the link between all those
resources. We are the
resources.
liaison for that, yes.
And then you also mentioned you have a veterans lounge, which is something new.
Yes, brand new. We just opened it up April the 2nd, and it's kind of like a mini USO. It has a big screen. Actually, it's one whole wall is a TV, and it's Project-A-Vision. And we always have people bring us in food, and we have a coffee and tea and a refrigerator, and there's computers in there for people to use, and there's, you know, very comfortable furniture, and it's a lounge area for veterans to meet, and the Student Veterans Organization meets in there, and other people meet in there, and it's always full at lunchtime. Veterans on their class breaks for lunch will bring their lunch in there and sit down and eat and chit-chat and so forth and so on.
And again, that's a place where they can have this interaction or talk about classes, talk about problems they might be having.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have a couple of private rooms too. If they need to talk to me specifically about a problem they're having and they don't feel comfortable talking in front of anybody else, you know, they can always come into my office and talk directly to me. I have an office next to me where they can talk to the bursar, who is the person who actually does the accounting, if they're having issues about money. And we have counselors that come there once a month and actually hold sessions in there. The VA healthcare system sends representatives here once a month, and they have closed-door counseling sessions about, you know, how to get your benefit, what benefit, and they can actually call their record up online right there and talk to them.
So rather than being a completely opaque bureaucracy, it's like this center can help veterans access the VA.
Oh, absolutely. I have set up hotlines into various spots in the VA so that when the veteran comes in, instead of sitting on the phone for 45 minutes to an hour and a half, I pick up the phone, go straight in, find out the information so that they don't end up sitting on the phone. And I know that if I sat on the phone for 45 minutes and hadn't gotten an answer, it's going to be click, sorry, Charlie. Yeah. So we try to avoid that because that's one of the frustrations veterans have is when they walk into a spot and they have to fight to try to get information, or they have to fight to try to get their benefit, it doesn't take long for that frustration to take them over and them say, this just isn't worth it. And I want them to understand it is worth it, and I can help get through that red tape real fast. And that's my job, is to make sure it gets through that red tape.
So these are contacts you've established with the various entities within VA.
Yes.
So I can call Ralph or I can call Sally and talk about this particular problem.
Absolutely.
So it is a very convenient link.
Yep.
And then I'll say, where is the Veterans Resource Center?
It is located in the library building on the Evergreen campus. So when you walk on the campus, there's a big clock tower.
Right.
That's one of the outstanding features of the campus. And that building is the library building. We're on the first floor. The floor you walk in on is not the first floor. It's the second floor. So we're actually one down. And you can ask anybody where the Veterans Resource Center is, because most people know where it is, because we even have people who are not veterans who come into the Resource Center because they like the atmosphere, they enjoy the camaraderie of veterans in there, and so most people on that campus know where the Veterans Resource Center is.
And then what are your office hours?
Monday through, when school is in session, which is normally the academic year, which is fall, winter, and spring, we're open from 8 to 9:30 at night, Monday through Thursday, and then we're open to 8 to 5 on Fridays. When school is not in session, which is on the breaks between quarters, we're open 8 to 5. And then during the summer, we only open 8 to 5.
Right. And as far as contacting the Resource Center, I saw your website is www.evergreen.edu/veterans. So that
Correct.
takes you right to the office. It's got a page there that describes it. Your phone number is 360-867-6254.
That is correct.
And your email is Kelly, that's Kelly with an EY.
Right.
Kelly R at evergreen.edu.
Kelly T.
Kelly T.
Yeah, my actual name is Thomas R. Kelly, and I go by Randy, so it's Kelly T at evergreen.edu. They can also just write veterans at evergreen.edu, and it'll get to me also.
Okay. So all that information is there, so if people just want to start looking at it to get a sense, they can go to these sites, and then they can either they need an appointment to come in, or they just
No,
walk in?
they do not need an appointment. If I'm available, if I'm not in a meeting, I will take them right in. It's an open door policy. They can walk right in. If they are on a tight time schedule and they need to be within a certain time frame, they can call me and set up an appointment. They can call the office if I'm not there. They will they have access to my calendar. They can put an appointment on there. So either way. I will also meet them on weekends if it's necessary. If they say I cannot get there except on a Saturday, I will be on campus on Saturday and we will meet on Saturday. So we will do whatever's necessary to get you in the door and get you set up for the benefits that you deserve. Because our job in the Veterans Resource Center, you know, and I tell veterans this when they walk in the door, my job is not to sell you on Evergreen. My job is to make sure you get the best bang for your buck. If Evergreen is that school, more power to you. I love the school. I think it's a wonderful school, and I wouldn't have come here if I didn't. But it may not be your cup of tea. And if it isn't, I will show you where you need to go, and I will help you get there. But you can always get started with us, and then we will point you in the right direction, whatever that is.
So any veteran in this area that wants to find out or explore their educational opportunities can come in. And we'll talk about it a
Absolutely.
little bit more later, but that's pretty wide open for veterans.
It is. It's a community resource.
And actually, Evergreen is very good about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about the cost of college. I looked on the website and saw your tuition is $6,800 for 3 semesters.
Right.
And that's in-state resident, $25,000 for non-resident. And then you have fees and books and supplies, room and board, that sort of thing.
Right.
So I think the total cost of that was like $22,000 or so. What I was looking at was like the $6,800 tuition. You've got like $270 in fees. Evergreen estimates the books and supplies are $870, and room and board is $11,300. Can you talk a bit about how the GI Bill covers that?
Right. The post 9/11 GI Bill is pretty generous. They pay 100% of tuition and fees up to the maximum in-state rate, which is more than enough for for Evergreen. It's actually more than enough for most schools, well, actually all schools in the state of Washington that are state schools. Some private schools, it's a little bit higher than what they could give, but most state schools meet that. And then they give them a housing allowance, and for this area, the housing allowance is $1,884 per month. And then they get a book allowance of $1,000 per academic year, and that's doled out at $41.67 a credit hour. So, for example, if you took 16 credit hours the first quarter, you'd get $666.73 in your book allowance. Then the next quarter, you would only get $333.27 because you've used your $1,000. And then the following quarter, you have no book allowance. But the veterans are smart, and they know how to stretch a dime. So there's a system that they've been using in the library called Summit, where they get their textbooks free of charge. And it's a consolidation of 34 or 39 schools in the Western District that trade textbooks back and forth. And so you can check a textbook out, and if a school has it, they'll send it to you overnight, and you can keep it for 6 weeks, and you can renew it one time, so you can have it for the whole quarter.
That's for 12 weeks?
Right, and then the only time you would ever pay for a textbook is if you damage it or you lose it. And a lot of veterans, that's the way they get their textbooks. They don't even bother. So even if you are using a benefit like the Montgomery GI Bill, where you don't get a book allowance, I mean, that's So veterans are pretty savvy about finding out how to get stuff they need.
Yeah, and we've talked primarily about the post 9/11 GI Bill, which is pretty generous, but there are other previous GI Bills.
Right. Well, actually, when veterans come out of the service, they are eligible for 2 GI Bills, the Montgomery GI Bill and the post 9/11 GI Bill. They have to make a choice which one of those they want.
Oh, okay.
The Montgomery GI Bill pays you $1,928 a month, and that's it. You have to pay your own tuition and fees, and anything you got left over is what you live on, etc. The post 9/11, I've already explained, they pay all tuition and fees, give you a housing allowance and a book allowance. So you have to ask yourself, well, why would I even go with why would I go with the Montgomery GI Bill if they got the post 9/11? Well, the VA says this: if you use all 36 months of your Montgomery GI Bill, every day of it, and I'll talk about that in just a second, then you can apply for the post 9/11 GI Bill and get an additional 12 months for a total of 48 months, which, if you're going for a master's degree or some advanced degree, that may make a difference. So you say, yeah, but for that first 3 years, I'm working my butt off at $1,928 a month. The state of Washington says, we don't see you fully funded at $1,928 under the Montgomery GI Bill. We're going to give you a 50% tuition waiver as a veteran. So you're only paying 50% tuition, so that $1,928 starts to stretch out a lot more, and it starts to get mighty close to the post 9/11. It's not quite exactly the post 9/11, but I've had, I think since I got here in 2013, I've had 27 veterans do that. But you have to be real good with your money, because you have to pay your tuition right as that $1,928 comes in. That's the first thing you pay off is that tuition, because if you can't pay your tuition, you can't register for the next quarter. If you can't register for the next quarter, the VA cuts your funding off, so it becomes a catch-22.
Yeah, I didn't realize the Montgomery Bill was actually still in force.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually, so if I'm a member of the service, that's something I need to consider.
Well, when you apply for the post 9/11, one of the check boxes you have to check is, I relinquish my rights to the Montgomery GI Bill. You can never go back to it. You can go from the Montgomery to the post 9/11, but you can't go post 9/11 to Montgomery.
I see. And what's the, I think you said, what's the limit on using the post 9/11 GI Bills? Like how many months?
It used to be 15 years. And if you got out before August of 2014, then you're tied to 15 years on your benefits. But after August of 2014, it's unlimited. You've got it for the rest of your life.
You can come back at age 60.
Yeah, it's called the Forever GI Bill. And for those guys who were awarded their benefits after August of 2014, then they're on the Forever GI Bill. Now, there are some guys who got their benefits before August of 2014, went off active duty, came back on active duty after August of 2014, And those guys, in certain cases, are getting the same thing, the Forever GI Bill, for their entire benefit. So the VA will make that determination and let them know in their certificate of eligibility how much time they got to use it.
And as far as the total benefits, is it on the post 9/11, how many months of support do they get?
36 months. Now, everybody looks at 36 months and says, oh, well, I only got 3 years of college, and college is 4 years. 36 months of benefits is actually about 5 years of college, because it's paid day for day that you're in class. So so the breaks don't count. And so we have a 77-day quarter, for example. So if you take 36 months, multiply it by 30 days, which is what the VA uses for any month, no matter whether it's 28 or 31 days, and you multiply that out, you actually get 1,080 days of benefits. So if you divide that by 77, you actually end up with almost 5 years of benefits. So if you're using a 77-day quarter, which is what we have, then that's what you end up with.
Now, does that apply to the tuition payments as well?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That isn't. Yeah, so definitely would need somebody coming in needs to come talk to you about that, because I wouldn't have thought about that. I just thought about, okay, you've got 36 months.
It's a formula that you sit down and you can plug in. And then I also talked to them about, once you expend that benefit, if you have a rated disability, we can talk about switching over to voc rehab. So there's a whole slew of things that we can do with benefits, and talk about how we can extend those benefits if it's necessary to get you into the goal that you want.
So if I come in and say I'm a 50% disabled veteran, I could get into voc rehab. Would I be able to do something like an academic program like psychology? Or?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it's not just trades.
No, it's not, but one of the things that we do with people who want to go into voc rehab, and one of the critical elements of getting into voc rehab, is you must have an educational plan that shows that it's necessary for this training, for the disability you have, for you to get a job. So we craft the educational plan that you need to take to the voc rehab people, so that when you sit down with them, you basically walk in and say, these are the courses I'm going to take, this is when I'm going to take them, this is the degree I'm going to end up with, these are the jobs that are available to me, and this is the prospectus for those jobs. And if you've done that, you've basically done their work for them. And so we've been very successful. We've had about 78 guys complete degrees with voc rehab, coming off of post 9/11 into voc rehab and completing their degree.
Now, would they still have the other GI Bill available, or is it an either-or thing?
No, normally they've expended their post 9/11 before they go into voc rehab, but they could very well come off of post 9/11, go into voc rehab, and back onto post 9/11. So it's a mix and match thing, and you've got to watch what you're doing and see what you're. So that's why I always tell them, you need to sit down with me and let's talk about what you have, what your goals are, because it's important to know, what do you want to do. Do you want a bachelor's degree? Are you looking for a master's degree? What is it what do you really want to do? And if you don't know what to do, we have people in our academic advising section that can actually sit down and do interest inventories with you and help focus you on what your goals are.
Well, yeah, just generally, I would like to have a college degree because it's the economic benefits, but I don't know what it would work. So that's something that would come in, they'd help you focus on that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So it sounds like, like I said, looking back on some of the previous GI Bills, it sounds much more complicated, but also much more generous.
Actually, it's not as complicated as people think it is. It just looks complicated on paper because of the bureaucratic jargon, but it's really pretty simple. And once you start getting used to it, and veterans, once they get past their first year, they're like, they know exactly how they know exactly how it operates, and they're in automatic. So I just keep an eye on them from that point forward to make sure that they're making sufficient academic progress and they're not running into any kind of problems and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so that sounds very good. So we talked a little bit about what veterans that come in and they talk with you about what their goals are, what they want to do. So you're their primary contact And then you also serve, I think you said it's a certifying officer. So they need to they need you to certify that they are registered in course.
Right.
So
I'm the school certifying official.
that starts the benefits. And then you mentioned that there's a Veterans Next Mission, a 4-credit course for the
Right,
veteran. So
right.
describe that.
Well, this is a course that was designed, and basically it's to help veterans get adapted to the educational environment of a 4-year school. And so the class is designed to teach them how to use our research tools. And so we actually have a research workshop that you do in one class. Then we have a writing workshop where somebody in the writing lab comes down and talks about how to do academic writing. We have a quantitative lab that comes down and does a quantitative reasoning workshop, math and science. We have people from each division come in and talk to the veterans about what's available, how they access it, and why, and what the important dates are. Like registration will come in and talk about these are the things you want to watch for, these registration dates, etc. Somebody will come in from Access Services and say, this is how you, if you need help, extra time in taking tests because you have a service-related injury, we can help you with that. If you need somebody to sit in class and take notes because you can't do that, we can do that. So we have them talk to them about everything that's available to them. We also read a novel. The novel I use in my class, we have 2 instructors in this class, and when I teach, the novel I use is Catch-22, and then we do a book report literally on Catch-22, and that gives them a chance to use the academic writing skills that they learned in the workshops and the research skills. And then we have another book we use called the 4 Agreements, which is a book about how to handle stress and how to adapt to being a civilian, coming out of the military. And so it's a course that was designed to help veterans kind of ease into the educational arena. It's open to veterans and dependents too, so it doesn't have to be just veterans, it can be dependents to help them.
Is this a course that's also available to other, or I guess support that's available to other students at Evergreen?
Any student can, any course at Evergreen, any student can take. I can't limit a course just to veterans. And one of the things that we had to get a waiver for on this course is there's a thing called the 85-15 rule that the VA has. It says no more than 85% of a class can be veterans. And if you have it, you have to have a waiver for it, because what they're trying to avoid is you creating classes just for veterans to get their money. And so they want to make sure that veterans are getting into classes that everybody else gets into, and you're not creating classes just to get veterans. And so we had to get a waiver for this particular class because this class was designed specifically for veterans and dependents. But we've had several classes where we've had just students that came in and wanted to see and wanted to be among veterans and hear their stories and so forth.
And is there much interaction between veteran students and non-veteran students?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have non-veteran students, non-dependent students come into the Veterans Center all the time with veterans and sit down and talk to them, and then of course they interact with them in class, and they'll come into the Veterans Center and study with them or have lunch with them, and so yeah, veterans and non-veteran students interact all the time.
So it's not a separate.
Oh no, it's not.
Very often in the military you feel like you're really separate from the rest of the world.
No, they interact with them on a daily basis in class, and they actually bring them sometimes back into the Veterans Center, as I said. But the Veterans Center also offers a place where they can get away from everybody too. So, they do interact with them, but it also gives them a place to escape from when they're, because sometimes it can be overwhelming when a veteran gets into an environment with a bunch of 18-year-olds that have never seen the world, and then, they need a spot that they can go and say, whew.
When they go talk to people, it's no reality.
Right, that's right.
And then we also talked about there are summer workshops for the academic faculty that orient them to veterans. So
right.
What are those like?
Last summer I took a bunch of veterans on a tour of JBLM, and we actually went up to the Intrepid Center, which is the new center that has been, there's like 7 of them around the nation, that's designed for veterans who have severe TBI or they've had severe injuries, limbs, lost limbs, etc. And we toured that, and we also toured Madigan and talked about the facilities that were available for veterans as far as medical facilities. And then we toured the Stone Education Center and then the Army Museum. And then that was one day. And then the next day we had a classroom session with the professors where we had a guy from the Washington Department of Veterans Affairs who was a TBI specialist. He came in and actually talked about what is TBI, how does it manifest itself, and what can you expect when a person has TBI in the classroom, what can you expect from them, as well as PTSD. And so it was quite enlightening to a lot of those professors as to, what TBI is, and that it, that a lot of people can suffer from TBI and not even realize they have, and the types of things that it shows up in the classroom and so forth. And then also we talked generally about veterans in the classroom, that they're coming into a new environment. And for example, and to this day I still do this, when I go into a room I tend to sit with my back to a wall so I'm facing out. Mm-hmm. And that's just something that was ingrained into me for 25 years, and I still do it to this day. Well, veterans do it when they go into a classroom. They'll sit in the back of the room so they've got a full view of what's ahead of them. And professors oftentimes will go, why do they always sit in the back of the room? Well, that's why they're sitting in the back of the room. And so, or if there's loud noises, if a professor all of a sudden slams a book down on the desk, the veteran might be under the desk or might be out the door, and they wonder why, and it's like, that's because they're reacting to that noise. And so, it was enlightening to the professors to hear that and to understand that kind of interaction and so forth. And then we had a student panel that actually talked about their experiences. They got to say, yeah, well, this is what irritates me in a classroom, or, I don't like it when a professor can't, say this is what needs to be done, A, B, C, D. None of this nebulous stuff. I say, well, see what you can get out of it. No, I don't want. I didn't pay you to tell me to see what I can get out of it. Tell me what you think I ought to see here.
I mean, they're looking for that direction that they had in the military.
And so the professors understand they have to be gradually brought up to that they can't, give them some specific direction, but then start teaching them how they walk away from that and start discovering things on their own. And so it was quite enlightening. So we try to hold these every summer because the professors have what are called summer workshops, and these are to prepare them for the following year.
I mean, there's been a lot of focus on, well, we need to address the veterans' needs, but at the same time, we have people who are non-veterans working with the veterans, make sure that they're aware of some of these things.
Oh, absolutely.
Mentioning the PTSD and the TBI, I mean, it took forever to even recognize those, and still most people don't quite fully understand them.
Right. And the other thing too is, for example, for the longest time it was like every person who came out of the service had PTSD. It was like, oh my God, everybody has PTSD, and they would, no, actually only about 8 to 10% of people coming out of the service have PTSD if they served in a combat zone. Not to say you can't have PTSD if you didn't serve in a combat zone, because you surely can. But only about 8 to 10% of the population comes out with PTSD. And PTSD, actually the VA was at one point wanting to call it PTSS, post-traumatic syndrome, stress syndrome, rather than disorder, because it's something that can be handled and it eventually can be dissipated. And so, but they've went back to calling it PTSD again. So.
I know a lot of us have always said, well, it's actually not a disorder. It's that's a normal reaction to some of these things.
Right.
It's,
precisely. It's a normal reaction to say.
Not reacting would be a disorder.
Right. At least in the veteran's mind. Yeah. That's right.
So it sounds like that's, so in addition to having the Veterans Resource Center and all that support, you've also gone out into the academic community to make them aware of how to serve veterans.
Absolutely.
And then you mentioned this student veterans organization. So
yes, we have a chapter of there's an organization called Student Veterans of America, which is nationwide. And we have a chapter of it here, and it's an organization that is the student's voice on campus. And there's a bunch of requirements that you have to meet in order to be a chapter member. The chapter has to be able to stand alone. It has to make its own decisions. I can't step in and tell them they need to do this or they need to do that. They have to have a seat on the student council, and they do. And this is to give a voice of veterans on the campus, and so our Student Veterans Organization does that. They've been in existence now, I think they actually started in 2014, and it was a slow start, but we've been picking up speed constantly since then. And so they do various things. They get together and go bowling. They go to ball games together. They have picnics in the park for their families. They look at what legislation is being proposed in the state legislature, and they get involved in trying to get their voice into that. So they're quite involved and so forth. So they have an organization. They have a coordinator who coordinates the group. They have a treasurer. They have like a master at arms and so forth. And they have meetings once a week during the school year, and they plan and organize their events and so forth.
And you said this is part of a national organization.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They go once a year. They go to the National Leadership Conference. Last year it was held in I think it was held in Orlando. The year before that, it was in Disneyland down here. They flip-flop coast, so that people who can't afford to go to one coast can at least get every other year they can get, And so we have sent ours to both coasts.
And are most of the veterans at Evergreen members of the organization?
Not everybody. A lot of veterans, about 60% of our veterans are evening and weekend students, and they're working, and so they don't tend to, they will come to the meetings, but they may not be involved in all the activities. Oftentimes they will come to the meetings because the meetings are held during the class day, like at between 1 and 2 o'clock on Wednesdays. Wednesday afternoons is what's called governance time. We have no classes. So clubs can have their meetings, organizations can get together, and so that's when they hold their meeting. And so you will get some of those veterans to come to the meeting, but they might not participate in all the activities. But you do have a core group that are daytime students that do comprise the organization and keep it running and so forth.
Yeah. Excellent. And you said earlier, it's a good pivot to talking about some of the veterans. You said you have about 500 veterans?
About 500 total veterans on campus. Only about 280, 300 are using benefits at any given time. So that's 280 dependents and veterans.
And you also mentioned that you have veterans going back as far as the Vietnam War.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, we've had Korean veterans come in and go to school.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, we have veterans from almost every generation. Haven't had a World War II veteran yet, but have had Korea and Vietnam, all kinds of Vietnam veterans, yeah.
So that's good. You have quite an age range then. So you
Oh,
have
yeah.
the traditional college age and post-military age up to senior veterans.
Right. And so, they, believe it or not, surprisingly enough, Evergreen's population, their normal population is the working person. It's a person who's anywhere from 25 to 40 years old. That's the average population on that campus. The 18 to 24-year-old population, that is not your average college population anymore.
I was unaware of that.
No, it has changed drastically in the last 10 years.
Is that unique to Evergreen, or is that pretty much a trend in college generally?
That's a trend nationwide, is that you're seeing an older crowd on campus, and you're seeing less of the 18 to 24-year-olds. It's a trend downward for 18 to 24-year-olds and a trend upward, or at least a plateau for 25 to 40-year-olds.
So it's almost as they're delaying that and then coming at it later in their adult life, or say post-service
Absolutely.
life.
And that was one of the impetuses behind this new post-9/11 GI Bill, the Forever GI Bill, because people were starting to realize, wait just a second, we're putting a 15-year limit on this. Some of these guys get out of the service, they've got to go to work, they've got a family, and by the time they get ready to go to school, their benefit's gone. And so enough guys complained and said, look, give us time to get out of the service and get our feet on the ground before, And so, not everybody wants to get out of the service and go straight into college. Some of us have families and have obligations, and that was the impetus behind that new GI Bill.
And that was just passed, what, last year?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It just came about.
And then I was also surprised to learn in our discussion, you said most of the people that come in have some post-secondary experience.
Quite a few veterans come in and they've either taken courses while they were in the service, or they've taken courses right after they got out of the service, or they went to a community college. And all of those things can translate into transferred credits. We also take a look at what's called their Joint Services Transcript. Every veteran has a Joint Services Transcript except for the Air Force. The Air Force has the Community College of the Air Force, and so they keep their own transcripts. But Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard are under what's called the Joint Services Transcript, so we can call up your transcript. We can look at every school you went to in the military, what the American College on Education recommends for credits, and then we will review those and we will give you credits for those classes that you took in the military, that training, that military training you had, and we will give you as much credit as we can for those also, along with any transcripts from other schools that you went to also.
So this would be if they had said some kind of training, say language training, or not sure what else would be, but something that somebody would take in the military.
Any kind of training. For example, if you've had a human resources training, we have human resource classes, so we can give you credit for that. Now, there are certain things that we can't give you credit for, like vocational courses, because we're not a vocational school, so we can't give you credit for that. We will not give you credit for your MOS. Nobody gives you credit, not even the American College on Education gives you. Now,
so if you're like a medic, and that was your MOS, you can't get credit for that.
No, but you can get credit for the schools you went to while you were a medic. Like if you went to a school on emergency management or emergency care, yeah, we can give you credit for that, but we can't give you credit for your MOS.
Right.
So we will take a look and we will comb that and give you every ounce of credit we can. Some of those credits will be lower level, which means 100 and 200 level. Some of them will be upper level. Not a lot are upper level 200 or 300 and 400 level classes that the military has, like nuke power. Language was one you mentioned. If you went to a war college, those are upper level courses, and we will give you upper level credit for that. The maximum number of credits that you can bring in to Evergreen is normally 90 credits, an associate's degree. But if you have upper level courses, we will allow you to go up to 135 credits. The last 45 credits have to be taken at Evergreen. So you couldn't walk into Evergreen and with 175 credits, take a 5-credit course and say, I got a degree from Evergreen. No, can't do that.
So you have to have a certain amount of campus experience.
Right, you certainly do.
Exposure. And then talked a little bit earlier, but just there's a difference between the academic environment and the military environment and the students or the veterans' reaction to that.
Well, quite frankly, I try to explain to veterans, entering college is a lot like the first time you entered the military. The first time you entered the military, it was all brand new, and it was all like, oh my, what do I do? And just like now, you don't want to screw up. You didn't want to screw up then. And it's the exact same thing. It just looks different. And so if you can grasp the fact that this really is no different than when you first went in the military, it gets to be a little bit easier. And one of the advantages you have, though, is you're coming into this with a wealth of experience that you don't even realize you have right now. And once you get your feet on the ground, and I can put your mind at ease about your benefits and all the other things that you think you need to worry about, I think you'll find out that adaptation is really not as hard as it seems it's going to be. Yeah, it does take a little getting used to be in a civilian environment where you got 18-year-old kids every day, and even to this day, I mean, I hear them say stuff that just makes me shake my head and go, how did you survive this long? But then you're around other adults who have been in the work world, never been in the military, but they've been in the work world, and they have a wealth of experience that you can draw on from them. And they draw from you about your military experience. Well, you were in Afghanistan. Did you ever have to deal with this or that? And they trade ideas with you, and they tend to find out that really having this age range that they have to deal with becomes an education within itself. And once they become aware of that, it really becomes a great experience for them, and so forth. Do you get a few that just can't adapt to it at all? Very seldom. I've had one guy. I got here in 2013, and I've had one person in that entire time that said, "I can't do this." And he just said, "I just cannot go back to school." He said, "I can't put up with this."
So that just wasn't a good fit for him.
That wasn't a good fit for him. And I told him, I says, "Well, how about how about a technical school? Let's look at something that's not four-year college." And he, as a matter of fact, he ended up going to a technical school, and I got a letter from him. He got his certificate of, I think it was in aircraft maintenance, and that's what he's doing now. As a matter of fact, he's working at SeaTac, and he loves it. But he didn't want to go to a four-year college. But he had come to a four-year college because everybody had beat him up. But you need to go to a four-year college. You need to get a college degree. But that wasn't his cup of tea.
Yes.
His cup of tea was, I want to do something with my hands, and I want to work with aircraft. Well, that's what he's doing, and they paid for him to get his training.
So it sounded like that worked out pretty well. I was scared. I know I asked you in an email about graduation rates. You weren't sure about. You had that. Like, how successful are the veterans in graduating?
Veterans are fairly successful. As a matter of fact, we're at about the 80% rate, where the college is at about 76 as a whole. We're above whatever the general college rate is. And veterans as a whole, nationwide, are generally have a fairly good graduation rate. And that varies. It'll go 80 up to 85, back down to 79, and it'll vary year to year. But for the most part, it's pretty steady around the 80% rate.
So probably, it seems like coming out of the military, you do have some work experience, you have some life experience, a little bit more mature. Sounds like that would really contribute to
it. It does, and a lot of veterans come in and don't realize that college really, as I was telling you earlier, the average age in a college is no longer the 18 to 24-year-old. The average age in a college is 25 to 40. And when they get in, they may see this 18 and 22-year-old crowd running around, and they don't see the older adults, because the older adults aren't out here running around with these kids.
They come in for class.
They come in,
go back out.
That's right. And so when they finally get in class and they start seeing this other generations that are there, it's like, oh, okay, whew. Maybe I'm not going to be running around with these kids all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a real shocking experience.
And so they just have to take time and take a deep breath, and and we teach them meditation too.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Is that part of the orientation?
It's part of the Veterans Resource Course. Is we talk about meditation and how to use meditation to help you relax and to handle the stress of of everyday life. And just because this is college doesn't mean that the stress of everyday life goes away. Just like in the military, you've got to handle the stress of everyday life, and we try to give them tools to help them handle that stress. Something outside, a drink or
more positive ways to deal with that.
Right.
And then also talking just generally about veterans going back for post-secondary education. It's you said you don't care if a veteran's going to come to Evergreen or not. You basically want to, if they want to come in and talk to you, they can come in and get some ideas. They can also do some investigation online. I think you had mentioned it's gibill.va.gov.
Right. There's www.gibill.va.gov, and that's a site that has a lot of information, and I mean there's a lot of pages, but there's a spot on there just for education. There's also www.vets.gov. That's the new website for all veterans, and that is a site where you can also get a copy of your DD-214. If you register, get a password, a login and a password, you can actually call your DD-214 up and get a copy of it.
And that would be open to any veteran from any era?
Yeah, and that keeps you from having to go through that long process of going through the National Archives and so forth, but they've opened it up now so that you can go to this vets.gov and try and recall your...
That's vets.gov.
Just vets. And actually, you can apply for your educational benefit on there too. It's kind of a one-stop shop for veterans. The VA did a lot of work at getting this website up and running because veterans were saying, look, you have me go over to here to www.gibill.va.gov, and then I have to go to e-benefits to do this, and then I have to go over to mill.connect for this. Can't you put all this stuff in one spot? The VA said, you know, you're right. And so they did this. They finally put it into vets.gov.
Yeah, I tried out the gibill.va.gov site. They have the school comparison. So you can click on that, put in your school, it'll bring up the school, here's the tuition, here's what's covered, here's housing allowances. A pretty good resource about what's available.
It'll talk about, do you have a veterans organization? Do they have a veterans resource center? Do they have a veterans director? It'll tell you all this right there about that school. It'll talk about how many are enrolled, how many, you know. So it's a wealth of information.
Yeah, and you had said that when veterans come in, they may not know, so they really do need to be thinking about, well, what is it I want to do? What school offers the kind of things, and which one would be right for me? So they can look at some of these schools and get a sense. Then they come in and talk to you, or as you said, do they have a veterans resource center? That seems to be a real key.
Right.
If you can locate that, then you know there's a place to go to get the information about any school you have.
Right. And if you go on a campus and they have a Veterans Resource Center, there's a pretty good chance that school has invested the time and money into taking care of veterans on that campus, because it's not cheap, and it takes time and resources to set up that center. So,
and you mentioned Evergreen was the first in the state to do it, but now all the four-year schools have.
Yeah, actually, every four-year school has a director and a Veterans Resource Center now. And most of your CTCs and community colleges also have a Veterans Resource Center. So this is something that has taken off nationwide, and the VA is backing this up 100%. They want you to have a Veterans Resource Center.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. I think we're beginning to run out of time, so I need to wrap it up.
Okay.
Is there anything real that we missed?
I encourage you, if you are a veteran and you're interested in education, all you need to do is either call me or visit with me, and I will be glad to help you.
Okay, and that phone number is 360-867-6254. So thank you very much, Randy.
Thank you for having me here.
It's good to have you. And thank you for watching. Providing our military veterans with the opportunity to pursue their educational goals allows them to combine the experience and skills learned in service with new horizons and knowledge as they transition into civilian life. This is one important path toward healing the wounds of war. The Veterans Resource Center at the Evergreen State College and other institutions around the nation provide support for making that important transition. Thank you for watching.
Soldiers speak out. We can tell the truth of what we've seen. We are not liars.